My family demanded I postpone my wedding 2 years for my divorced sister. But when I got married without them, and the family discovered the truth, they were left completely isolated. I'm 27 years old. I work in graphic design for a mid-sized agency, and honestly, I never thought I was going to have to tell this story. But after everything that happened with my wedding a few months ago, I feel like I need to get it out because the amount of drama that unfolded was something I never imagined. And that's saying something. Considering I'd already been dragging around years of basically being the invisible daughter in my family, I guess I should start from the beginning so you understand why things exploded the way they did. I grew up being the younger sister of Samantha, who's 5 years older than me, so she's 32 now. For as long as I can remember, Samantha was always the perfect child. You know, the one who got the best grades, who won all the school competitions, who had a million friends and all the teachers adored her. I, on the other hand, was quieter, more normal, let's say. I got good grades, but wasn't a genius, had my friends, but wasn't super popular, and basically went unnoticed next to my sister. And the worst part wasn't that. Honestly, the worst part was that my parents never bothered to hide that she was their favorite. Literally, when she won something, there was a celebration dinner. When I won something, it was like, oh, that's nice. And that was it. Samantha could do whatever she wanted, and there were never consequences. But if I came home 10 minutes late, the world would come crashing down on me. You know what I mean? It was a really toxic dynamic, but when you're a kid, you don't see it that clearly. You just feel like something's wrong with you, like maybe you're not good enough or interesting enough. What I also need to mention is that Samantha wasn't just the favorite. She was also a terrible bully to me throughout our entire childhood and adolescence. She made me feel like trash constantly, made fun of my clothes, my friends, everything I did. And when I complained to my parents, they basically told me not to exaggerate, that it was just sister stuff, that Samantha was only playing. But they weren't games. Seriously. They were hurtful comments every day, hiding my things, ruining plans with friends by telling them lies about me, that kind of thing. And my parents never ever corrected her. Looking back, I should have realized that dynamic was going to follow me my whole life. But I guess you always hold on to hope that at some point your parents are going to really see you. Right? When I finished high school, I went to study in another city, like 2 hours from where my parents lived, and honestly, it was liberating. I could be myself without constantly comparing myself to Samantha or feeling like I wasn't enough. That's where I met Tyler, my now husband, when we were like 23 years old. He was studying engineering and I was doing design. We met at a party that a mutual friend threw and we connected immediately. Tyler is one of those people who makes you feel like you matter, who really listens to you, who's interested in what you think and feel. The complete opposite of what I'd lived with at home. We started dating and basically never separated after that. He knew from the beginning the whole story with my family because I told him I didn't want to hide anything from him, and he was always super understanding and supportive of everything. Meanwhile, Samantha had gotten married at 26 to a guy she met at work. They had a huge wedding that my parents basically financed completely, like something around $40,000 or more. I'm not sure of the exact amount, but it was ridiculous. I was a bridesmaid because they basically forced me to, even though Samantha and I had never had a close relationship. Throughout the entire wedding, my parents wouldn't stop talking about how perfect Samantha was, how well she'd done in life, how proud they were. They didn't even mention me in the speeches, literally. And Tyler was there with me seeing everything, and afterwards told me he couldn't believe how badly they treated me. But I was already used to it, I guess. Years passed. I continued with Tyler and things were going super well. We moved in together after 3 years of dating and were building our life. I saw my parents maybe once every 2 or 3 months. Enough to keep up appearances, but without getting too emotionally involved because I'd already learned that expecting something from them was only going to disappoint me. Samantha was still married and lived like half an hour from my parents, so she saw them all the time and continued being the perfect daughter. And then, like a year and a half ago, Samantha got divorced. Apparently things with her husband weren't working out. I never really knew the details because we're not close and she didn't tell me anything. But basically they separated after 6 years of marriage. And this is where everything started going to hell. Because Samantha moved back into my parents' house, saying she needed time to recover emotionally and reorganize her life. My parents, obviously, welcomed her with open arms and started this whole drama of poor Samantha. She's suffering so much, She needs our support. Blah, blah, blah. And look, it's not that I didn't have empathy for her going through a divorce. I mean, divorces are difficult. But the way my parents reacted was like it was the worst tragedy in the world, when they'd basically ignored me my whole life. All this was happening while Tyler and I were in a super happy moment in our relationship. We'd been together 4 years, almost 5, and things couldn't be going better. And then, like a year ago, Tyler proposed to me. It was super romantic. We went away for a weekend to the beach. He'd planned everything. Took me to dinner at a beautiful restaurant overlooking the ocean and proposed there. I obviously said yes. I was super excited. It was literally what I'd been waiting for. I called my parents the next day to tell them the news, thinking that maybe, just maybe, they were going to be happy for me. And you know what they told me? They said congratulations, but in a super flat tone, like without emotion, and then they started asking me when we were thinking of getting married. I told them we were thinking of doing it in about 8 or 9 months, that we wanted a spring wedding. Nothing too big, like 80 people, something intimate and nice. There was an uncomfortable silence, and then my mom said they needed to talk to me about that. I said, sure, what's up? And that's when they dropped the bomb on me. They told me I couldn't get married yet, that I needed to wait. And I was like, wait for what? Wait, why? And my father, with that serious voice he used when he was giving orders, told me that Samantha had just gone through a very difficult divorce, and that it was insensitive of me to want to get married when she was still processing her marital failure, that it was going to be very painful for her to see her younger sister getting married while she was single again. And I was literally in shock. Like, are you seriously asking me to postpone my wedding because of Samantha's feelings? But wait, because it gets worse. They didn't just ask me to postpone the wedding, they told me specifically to wait 2 years. 2 full years. They told me that Samantha needed that time to heal, to maybe find someone new, to be in a better place emotionally, and that only then would it be appropriate for me to get married. Honestly, while they were telling me this, I was thinking, this can't be real, this has to be a joke. But no, they were completely serious. My mom even added that as a family we needed to support Samantha in this difficult time and that I had to be understanding and put my sister's needs before my own. I didn't even know what to say. Tyler was there with me when I made the call and was looking at me with a face of total disbelief. I told them I needed to think about it and hung up. Tyler exploded, told me he couldn't believe what he'd just heard, that it was the most ridiculous and selfish thing he'd heard in his life, that my parents were completely out of line. And I knew it. I mean, I knew what they were asking me was absurd, but there was a part of me, that part that was still the little girl seeking her parents' approval, that wondered if maybe I should do it, if maybe I really was being selfish. But Tyler made me see things clearly. He told me, Ava, you've spent your whole life putting yourself second for your sister, your whole life being invisible to your parents, and now you want to postpone our wedding? One of the most important days of your life. For her? How long are you going to let them treat you like this? And he was right. Completely right. I knew that if I gave in on this, it was going to be the same as always, me sacrificing my happiness for Samantha while my parents kept prioritizing her over me. I decided I needed to talk to Samantha directly, like confirm whether this really came from her, or if it was just my parents assuming things. I called her a few days after that horrible conversation with my parents and asked her directly. I said, hey, congratulations on my engagement first. And then I asked her what she thought about the wedding date. And she, with that condescending voice she always used with me, told me she'd talked to our parents and that everyone agreed the best thing was for me to wait. She told me it wasn't personal, but that she was going through a very difficult time and that it would really hurt her to see her younger sister getting married when her own marriage had failed. She told me that if I really loved and respected her, I would understand and wait. And that's when something broke inside me. Like, I literally felt like something clicked in my brain. I told her, you know what, Samantha? I'm not going to wait. I'm going to get married on the date that Tyler and I decide. And if that's a problem for you, just don't come to the wedding. She got angry. I started yelling at me that I was selfish, that I'd always been a bad sister, that I'd never cared about family. And I, for the first time in my life, answered back. I told her that she'd made my life impossible for years, that she'd treated me like trash our entire childhood, that she'd never been a real sister to me, and that I didn't owe her anything. I hung up and stood there shaking, but also feeling strangely good, like liberated. Obviously, my parents found out about that conversation because Samantha ran to tell them, and they called me furious. My father told me I was a disappointment, that I was being cruel to my sister. How could I be so insensitive? My mom was crying in the background saying she couldn't believe her daughter was so selfish. I told them my decision was made, that Tyler and I were going to get married in 9 months as we'd planned, and that I hoped they could attend and be happy for me. My father told me that if I went ahead with the wedding without considering Samantha's feelings, they weren't going to go. I thought he was just threatening, trying to manipulate me into changing my mind. So I told them it was their decision, and hung up. The next few months were crazy while we planned the wedding. Tyler and I decided to do everything on our own, without help from my parents, which honestly was a relief because that way they had no control over anything. We booked a beautiful place for the ceremony and reception, a kind of rustic but elegant venue. Hired a photographer, catering, everything. We invited our friends, Tyler's family, who are super nice, and welcomed me with open arms from the beginning. And I also invited some aunts, uncles, and cousins from my side of the family. I didn't tell most of the relatives what was going on with my parents and Samantha because I didn't want to bring drama into the invitations. I just told them we were getting married and that we hoped to see them there. My parents kept their threat. Like a month before the wedding, I sent them a message asking if they'd reconsidered and if they were going to attend, and my mom responded that no, they couldn't support my decision to be so selfish with my sister, and that until I decided to postpone the wedding for 2 years as they'd originally asked, they weren't going to be part of it. Literally, they weren't going to go to their own daughter's wedding because I wasn't willing to postpone my life for my sister. When I showed Tyler the message, he couldn't believe they were going to go that far, but I wasn't surprised anymore. Honestly, it was exactly the kind of thing you'd expect from them. The week before the wedding, I was super nervous, not so much about getting married because I was super sure about that, but because I was going to have to walk down the aisle alone. We'd planned for my father to walk me down, obviously, because that's how it's supposed to work normally. But now he wasn't going to be there. Tyler offered to have his father walk me down, which was super sweet, but I felt like it wasn't right, that if my own father wasn't going to be there, then I was going to walk alone, like as a statement of independence or something. The wedding day arrived, and honestly, it was beautiful despite everything. We had a perfect day, sunny but not too hot. The place looked amazing with all the decorations we'd chosen. My friends were there helping me get ready. Tyler's mom was also with me all morning, being super sweet and telling me how beautiful I looked. When it came time for the ceremony, I stood at the end of the aisle in my dress, alone, and started walking. And you know what? I didn't feel alone at all. I felt strong. I felt proud of myself for having defended what I wanted, for not having given in to the manipulation. Tyler was waiting for me at the end with that huge smile he has, crying a little, and when I got to him and we held hands, I knew I'd made the right decision. The ceremony was perfect. We got married with an officiant who was a friend of ours. We said our vows that we wrote ourselves. It was super emotional and personal. When they declared us husband and wife and we kissed, all our guests clapped and cheered, and I felt literally like the happiest person in the world. I didn't need my parents there to validate my happiness. I didn't need Samantha to give me her blessing. I only needed Tyler and the people who really loved and supported me. At the reception is when things got interesting. Several of my aunts, uncles, and cousins came up to me asking where my parents were, because obviously it was weird that the bride's parents weren't at the wedding. At first I tried to avoid the topic, said vague things like, "Oh, they couldn't come, they had other commitments." But one of my cousins, who was always closer to me, insisted and asked me what was really going on. And there, after a couple glasses of champagne, and with all the emotion of the day, I told them the truth. I told them the whole story about Samantha's divorce, my parents' request that I postpone the wedding for 2 years, their refusal to attend when I didn't agree. I told them about years of favoritism, of being treated like the invisible daughter. Everything. My family's reaction was incredible. They were shocked, angry, couldn't believe what I was telling them. Several of them hugged me and apologized for not having realized before how badly my parents treated me. My aunt, my mom's sister, was particularly furious and told me she was going to talk to my mother about this, that what they'd done seemed unacceptable to her. And I told her not to worry, that I'd already made peace with the situation, but she insisted that this couldn't just stay like this. The days after the wedding were weird. Tyler and I went on our honeymoon to Greece for 2 weeks, which was amazing and helped me disconnect from all the family drama. But when we got back, the craziness started. Apparently, after the wedding, several of my relatives confronted my parents about their absence and made it very clear what they thought about their behavior. My aunt told them that what they'd done was unforgivable, that they'd prioritized one adult daughter's feelings over their other daughter's wedding day, that it was cruel. Other cousins also told them similar things, and basically my extended family started ostracizing my parents. What was really the last straw, and what made me laugh from pure irony when I found out, was that one of my cousins who was getting married in a few months uninvited my parents from her wedding. She sent them a message telling them that after finding out how they'd treated me, she didn't feel comfortable having them at her celebration, that someone capable of doing that to their own daughter wasn't someone she wanted at one of the most important days of her life. And honestly, I'm not going to lie. When they told me that I felt enormous satisfaction, finally, someone else was seeing my parents for what they really were. My parents obviously didn't take well that the family was judging them. They started calling me, sending me messages, but I didn't respond. After the honeymoon, I decided I needed space, that I wasn't ready to have any kind of conversation with them. Then they started leaving voicemails, increasingly aggressive messages blaming me for ruining their relationship with the rest of the family, telling me I'd spoken badly about them to everyone, that I'd made things up, that I was a liar. It was frustrating because I hadn't made anything up. Literally, I'd only told the truth to relatives who asked, but they saw it as if I'd gone out of my way to defame them. Things escalated when they started using different numbers to call me because I wasn't answering from their normal numbers anymore, and they also started sending me messages on social media, by email, everywhere. It was basically harassment. Tyler told me to block them everywhere, and that's what I did. I blocked my parents and Samantha from my phone, from Facebook, Instagram, from everything. I needed peace of mind, and they clearly weren't going to give it to me. One day, like 2 months after the wedding, I went to my childhood home because my parents had sent me a message from a neighbor's number saying they'd left all my childhood belongings outside and that if I didn't pick them up, they were going to throw them away. I went with Tyler, and sure enough, all my things were in boxes in the front yard. There were photos of me, my diplomas, some stuffed animals from when I was a kid, clothes, books, all kinds of things. Some were in bad condition because they'd apparently been outside for a few days and it had rained, so there were ruined things. We picked everything up, put it in the car, and I left without knocking on the door or talking to them. Honestly, at that point, I didn't even feel sad anymore. I was just like, okay, this is just the final confirmation that they really don't care about me. And now we get to the part that makes me laugh and angry at the same time. Literally, a month ago, I found out from a cousin that Samantha is engaged again. Yes, you read that right. My sister, who was supposedly so devastated by her divorce that I had to postpone my wedding for 2 years so she could heal, is engaged again. And guess when she's planning to get married? In like 4 months. 4 months from when she got engaged. So her divorce was a year and a half ago. She's already gotten over everything. Met someone new, got engaged, and is getting married in less than 2 years from her divorce. All while my parents asked me to wait 2 years to get married for her. When I found out, I sent my mom a message from a new number because she had mine blocked, and I said, "So Samantha's getting married in 4 months, but I had to wait 2 years." Interesting how priorities work in this family. And she blocked me from that number too without responding. Because of course, the truth hurts, and they can't admit that their whole demand that I postpone my wedding had nothing to do with Samantha's supposed trauma and everything to do with the fact that they simply value me less than her. Now I'm here, married, and happy with Tyler, living my life away from all that toxicity. The extended family still talks to me. Several of my cousins tell me they're proud of me for standing up for myself. My aunt visits often and tells me she wishes she'd realized sooner how they treated me. And my parents? They still aren't talking to me. I guess waiting for me to be the one to go ask them for forgiveness or something. But that's not going to happen. Tyler tells me I made the best decision of my life by not giving in on the wedding thing, that if I'd postponed, they probably would have found another excuse in 2 years for me to keep waiting. Do I feel guilty sometimes? Maybe a little. Because no matter how toxic they are, they're still my parents, and there's a part out of me that wishes I had a normal family, where they loved and supported me. But mostly I feel relieved, liberated, For the first time in my life, I put my needs first, defended my happiness, and got married on my own terms, without letting anyone manipulate me. And that, honestly, is priceless.